Here are 3 tips to finally get your bar chords to ring clear. If you don't know what a bar chord is a type of chord that you have to lay one finger over multiple strings on one fret and then building a shape underneath them. It's one of the tougher things to do when you're first learning to play guitar. It can be super frustrating for a beginning guitar player because a lot of times first starting to bar a chord, you get muted notes and buzzing notes and your whole chord doesn't ring clearly for all 6 strings. Before we cover the 3 tricks, let's talk about what basically a bar chord is. A bar chord is a type of chord that is based off of shapes you might already know from the open position, such as an E major or an E minor. However, when you shift up an E major, E minor, we have to cover the strings that would have been open, creating a bar chord. So when you find your root note on the low E string, such as the A on the 5th fret, you can bar it, covering all the 6 strings, create an E major shape underneath it, and now you have an A chord. If you want an A minor chord, you will bar it in the same position, create an E minor shape underneath it, and you now have an A minor chord. These are completely movable all around the neck. So you either have E shapes or E minor shapes, and your root note is the note you find on the E string there, and you can shift it all over. The same goes for the A string. When you find the root note on the A string, you'll create your bar, and underneath it either create an A minor shape or an A major shape. And those are completely movable all around the neck as well. Now let's get into the 3 tips that will finally help your bar chords ring clear. Tip number 1. When barring, we don't have to always have our finger starting right where the strings start. A lot of times my students will think that we have to perfectly cover it where the strings begin. The problem is we have creases in our fingers, and everybody's finger is a little bit different in length and size and where it might land on the string. Those creases are kind of the enemy of bar chords. When you place your finger into over the bar and you have a crease catching one of the strings, you might not hear that string ring because it's catching into a crease. So the way to avoid that, and the first tip, is you don't have to have your finger perfectly where the strings are. Sometimes overshoot it. And it's okay if your finger's hanging over the top. You've avoided some of the creases that you actually might have ran into before in order to get that to ring. Same goes for maybe coming back a little bit when doing A string root shapes. You can actually come back a little bit and not be perfectly over right where the strings are. So play with exactly where your finger might avoid the creases. Tip number 2. When doing the bar chord, and obviously we know you might be able to adjust where your finger starts and begins on here, but another great trick is to slightly roll the finger. And when I'm rolling it more towards the very top headstock of the guitar. And what this does is it begins to now flatten my finger out and again avoid the creases that we run into when starting a bar chord. So I just kind of roll it to the side, and it can help me actually get that flatter side of my finger to get all those notes to ring. So when trying it, overshoot a little bit, find where your sweet spot is, and then you can roll it a little bit as an angle there, as opposed to having it completely flat on the fret. Tip number 3, adjust your string height. A lot of times players, they buy a brand new guitar and they have a setup where the strings are super high off the fretboard. You can actually adjust the height of your strings. And I recommend taking your guitar into a luthier or a guitar repair shop and doing what's called a setup. And what setups do is they adjust all the measurements of your guitar, and most importantly, they can bring down the height of your strings. You may not know it, but you might be trying to do this on a guitar that's going to be impossible even for me to do. So a lot of times I have beginners buy a brand new guitar, bring it in, and the strings are so high I could stick my finger underneath it. That's going to make bar chords really tricky to do. So when you first get a guitar, or if you're having a trouble with any bar chord, also double check your string height. If the height is too high, it's going to be tough for anybody. Get it lowered. You could bring it into a professional shop or look up exactly how to lower the action, what's called, on your guitar. And that will also help your bar chords ring clear. Thanks for tuning in for these 3 tips. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel and hit like, and I'll see you next time.